It is late, and the world around you is quiet. The screens are dim, the clocks keep their steady tick, and the noise of modern life has thinned into background hum. You could be anywhere. A dark apartment, a silent bedroom, a couch still warm from your presence. But tonight, your mind is being asked to travel somewhere older, far older than the sound of traffic outside your window. Close your eyes, if you like. Let the walls around you blur. Let the light of your room dissolve into a softer glow. Imagine instead the shimmer of embers, orange, fading, alive. A fire smolders beside you, its warmth brushing your skin. There are no street lamps, no alarms, no blue glow of phones demanding attention. Only this circle of warmth, only this thin shield of flame between you and the great night of the world. You wake before the sun, but not because an alarm has ordered you to. You wake because the fire needs feeding. The air is cool and smells of ash, hide, and earth. The roof above you is not plaster and beam, but bent willow branches and stretched animal skin, swaying faintly with the wind. This is no rare camping trip, no wilderness escape. This is your life, and it has been the life of your ancestors for tens of thousands of years. The year is not 2025. It is not even 500 or 1000 BCE. It is closer to 10,000 BCE, long before walls rose, before clocks began to measure us, before kings and cities and roads. 99% of human history lies here, in this dim firelight, in this rhythm of waking with embers and sleeping with stars. The world of concrete, engines, and schedules is only a flicker compared to the long fire of foraging life. The silence of this world is not empty. It hums with sound if you listen closely. The hiss of fire, the breath of kin asleep beside you, the far cry of a bird stirring too early. The rhythms are slow, but they are not lifeless. They are alive in a way our hurried hours rarely allow. Time is not carved into minutes. It is felt in pulses, the cooling of embers, the paling of the sky, the return of light. And here is the truth most of us forget. For more than 95% of the time, humans have walked this earth. We lived like this, wandering, gathering, hunting, tending, remembering. Before a city was ever built, before a god was carved, before a wall divided one people from another, there was only this, a body stirring in the dark, another hand feeding the fire, and the unbroken thread of memory tying morning to morning. Think of your life now. Perhaps you live in a house with doors and locks. Perhaps you have food in the fridge and a clock that orders your day. You call that stability. But what if stability once meant something else? Not permanence, but presence. Not walls, but warmth. The people of 10,000 BCE were not rushing toward anything. They were not behind us on some ladder of progress. They were simply alive as we are now, though in a rhythm that feels alien to our eyes and ears. This prologue is an invitation to slow down, to step outside the story of progress and remember the older story, the one written not in books or screens, but in ash, in footprints, in the circles around fire. Tonight, we are not racing forward, we are walking back. Back into a time before walls, before kings, before ours. A time when the only architecture was firelight and memory, when knowledge was carried in the body, when the night sky was both map and cathedral. As the fire at your side is fed and the embers glow brighter, you feel it. The faint recognition. Something in your nervous system remembers this. Something in your bones knows this rhythm. You were not born for walls alone. You were not born for ticking clocks. You were born for the circle of fire, for the stories that bend time into memory, for the slow dawn before the first cities existed. And so we begin. The fire beside you breathes again, flames licking the edges of last night's wood. The warmth draws you fully awake, not with the shrill insistence of an alarm, not with the red glow of digits declaring you late. You wake because the world is stirring, and your body is part of that stirring. The sky above is still a deep indigo, the kind of blue that bruises into black at the edges. You stretch your legs, feeling the coolness of earth beneath you. The ground is not carpet or concrete. It is soil pressed flat by many nights of sleeping bodies. A mat of woven reeds softens your place. Beside you, a child stirs in their hide covering, murmuring but not yet awake. Across the circle, an elder coughs softly and rises with practiced care. No one tells them it is time. There is no clock here, but still, the day begins. Time is felt, not counted. You do not say, 5 o'clock. You say the fire has shrunk. You do not say 30 minutes until sunrise. You say the birds are restless. Each rhythm outside is mirrored by rhythm inside. The crackle of fire is met by the growl of stomach. The paling of sky is matched by the pulse of anticipation. Dawn is not a number, it is a returning presence. You step outside the willow-framed shelter. The air is cool, crisp enough to sting your lungs, but it is not unwelcome. The breath of night still lingers. You look east. The horizon is faintly lighter, a wash of gray before gold. This light will grow, as it always does, not because a calendar promises it, but because the world itself remembers. Nearby, others emerge. 20 to 30 people in total. Your band, your kin, your world. Some are blood relatives. Others are bonded by choice, by story, by shared survival. There is no nation, no border, no census. Only a circle of people bound by rhythm. The youngest stay close to the embers, still half asleep. The strongest and swiftest are already moving toward the water's edge, carrying baskets and spears. The oldest remain steady, watching, remembering. They will not leave camp today. Their work is slower, but no less vital. The morning is quiet, but not silent. Cranes call from the lake. Insects buzz low to the ground. Somewhere in the distance, a boar grunts. Each sound is not random, it is information. The cranes mean water is still plentiful. The insects mean warmth will come. The boar means food is near, but also risk. Your ears do not dismiss these as background noise. They are signals, as sharp and clear as any news broadcast. The world speaks, and you understand. Inside the camp, a woman kneels by the embers. She draws out a piece of charred wood, blows gently, and fans the flame into brightness. It catches, sparks, grows. Fire is not easy to create from nothing. To carry it through the night is a skill. To coax it back to life is knowledge. Children watch with wide eyes, not with questions, but with quiet imitation. They know someday it will have to do the same. This is their education, not in classrooms, but in circles of presence. The smell of smoke begins to rise, curling upward into the pale sky. Others bring roots dried from yesterday's gathering, fish caught and gutted before sleep. A flat stone near the fire is warmed and used to cook. There is no table, no chairs, but there is food shared by many hands. The first bites of morning taste of char and earth, bitter but sustaining. Laughter comes easily too. Someone jokes about a snoring neighbor, and the group chuckles. The day begins with warmth, not deadlines. This rhythm is universal, from the Levant to Eastern Africa, from the plains of Europe to the river valleys of Asia. Small bands of humans rise like this, always near water, always near fire, always near one another. It is not chaos, it is patterned. It is a choreography written into bones. Your tools are simple, but not crude. A basket stitched with gut, strong enough to carry gathered roots. A stone scraper, flaked to a sharp edge. A spear shaft, bound with sinew, balanced for throwing. Each object holds memory. It was shaped not just by hands, but by knowledge passed down from hands before. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is made thoughtlessly. The day stretches ahead, but not as a schedule. There are no meetings, no shifts, no commutes. Only tasks flowing into tasks. The young adults will scout for game. The gatherers will search for edible greens and tubers, their minds a living map of which plants sprout after rain, which berries ripen before heat. Children will trail behind, learning without being told they are learning. Elders will sit, repair tools, tell stories, and guard the fire. Each role is fluid, shifting with age, with ability, with need. You walk with the gatherers, bare feet brushing through reeds damp with dew. The earth is soft, pliant. Each step is a conversation with the land. You know where the ground dips because it was wet last season. You know which branches are heavy with nuts because last night you heard squirrels. You know where to look for honey because bees led you there weeks ago. This is not luck. It is memory. It is pattern. As the light strengthens, so does the rhythm. The band disperses into smaller groups. A hunt begins quietly, without speeches or commands. Eyes track hoof prints. Noses test the wind. Hands grip shafts of spears. Somewhere ahead, a herd moves unseen. If fortune aligns, tonight there will be meat. If not, roots and berries will suffice. Hunger is not constant, but it is familiar. No one panics. No one fears starvation today. The world, though unpredictable, is abundant if you know how to read it. By midday, the camp hums with activity. Fish are drying on racks. Fibers are twisted into rope. Bones are scraped clean, carved into needles, tools, ornaments. The sun climbs, and people rest in its warmth. Some nap, some sing softly. A child plays with mud, shaping it into a small figurine. The group does not laugh at this. They watch, remembering that art, like food, is survival of another kind. The day does not race. It flows. It does not demand productivity. It offers presence. You notice how your body feels here. It is tired sometimes, yes, but not in the hollow way of modern fatigue. It is tired because it has moved, walked, lifted, hunted. Muscles ache, but they also grow. Breath comes heavy, but it is full. When you rest fully without buzzing thoughts. As evening approaches, the groups return. Some with roots, some with berries, some with nothing at all. The hunters carry stories even if not meat. Children listen, wide-eyed, as tales are told of a deer that escaped, of a trail that faded, of a near miss with a wild boar. These are not failures. They are lessons, shared openly, shaping the next hunt. The fire grows bright again as the sun sets. Shadows lengthen. The circle forms. There is no clock, but everyone knows it is time. Food is shared, laughter is repeated, stories are told. The sky darkens into velvet, stars piercing through. Some are named, not as constellations, but as characters in stories. That is the hunter, someone whispers. That is the great bird. The children memorize, not through charts, but through story. The stars are not abstract. They are alive, remembered, sung. Sleep comes slowly, not forced. One by one, bodies curl near the embers. The fire is banked again, carefully, to last the night. Breath softens into rhythm. The day closes as it began, with presence, with warmth, with kin. No clock declares the end. The fire and the sky do. And you, lying here in the glow of embers, feel something you rarely feel in the modern world. You feel at home, not in walls, not in possessions, but in rhythm. A rhythm that has held humans for nearly all of history, long before cities were even imagined. Tomorrow will come, but tomorrow is not yet. Tonight, there is only this: fire, breath, memory, and the slow unfolding of dawn without clocks. The night fades, and as the fire exhales its last sparks, your gaze lingers on the shelter around you. It is not a house, not a fixed structure, not a monument that will last for centuries. It is a shape born of need, memory, and the resources at hand. And it is enough. Your home is a dome of bent willow branches, lashed together with strips of sinew and covered in stretched animal hide. From the outside, it looks almost like part of the earth itself, low, rounded, blending with the reeds and brush. From the inside, it breathes faintly with the wind, expanding and contracting as if alive. You did not buy it. You did not sign a deed. You made it with your hands, with your people, with the memory of how to shape branches so they bend without breaking. There is no blueprint drawn on paper, but there is pattern, repetition, ritual. You watched the elders bend saplings into arcs, saw how they crossed them at the top to form a skeleton strong enough to resist the wind. You learned how to scrape hides so they stretched tight and shed water. You noticed where to leave gaps for smoke to escape, how to dig shallow trenches so rain would not pool at the entrance. This is not architecture in the modern sense. It is living knowledge, a library held in memory and muscle. Step outside the camp and you will see other shapes. Farther north, where winters bite harder, shelters are built of mammoth bones, colossal ribs stacked into walls, skulls anchoring the frame. Furs drape across the structure like thick blankets. Clay seals the cracks. These bone houses, strange to modern eyes, are sturdy, insulated, practical. Their builders were not primitive. They were engineers without pencils, architects without rulers. They read the land and used what it offered. In wetter places, shelters rise on platforms to avoid floods. In forests, they are framed with saplings and bark. In grasslands, they are woven from reeds and grasses, domes that spring up quickly and disappear just as quickly. Nothing is permanent, because permanence is not the goal. Mobility is. Shelter must last just long enough to serve, then yield back to the earth. Inside, the space is modest but intentional. A hearth glows at the center. Ash is swept to the side. Mats of woven grass mark sleeping areas. Bones and tools lie neatly along one edge. A basket holds dried roots. A water skin rests near the door. There is order here, not the rigid order of walls and hallways, but the fluid order of shared space. Everything has a place, and everyone knows it. Children play near the entrance, their small hands tracing patterns in the dirt. Elders sit against the wall, their presence both anchor and archive. The air smells of smoke, hide, and the faint tang of herbs drying near the fire. It is close, yes, but not stifling. The shelter is not meant to isolate you from the world. It is meant to keep the worst out and hold the warmth in. The rest, the wind, the sounds of birds, the night cries of animals, still reaches you. You are not sealed away. You are part of the world even as you rest within it. This is a different philosophy of home. A modern house stands against the world, declaring ownership, permanence, control. These shelters stand with the world, declaring only presence. They are temporary by design, because life is temporary by design. To move is to live. To cling too long is to suffer. At some sites, archaeologists have found evidence of the same structures built again and again, in the same place, across generations. The post holes align. The hearths repeat. This is not laziness. It is tradition. It is memory carved into landscape. You return to a place when the berries ripen, when the fish run, when the herds pass. You rebuild what you built before, guided not by blueprints but by rhythm. The act of rebuilding itself is ritual, a way of remembering who you are and where you belong. There are no doors here, no locks. Privacy, as you know it today, does not exist. Life is lived together, sleeping, eating, working, telling stories in the same space. You cannot hide easily, but you are never alone either. Safety comes not from walls, but from presence. If a predator approaches, someone will hear. If a child stirs in the night, someone will notice. The group itself is the shelter, and the structure only makes that truth visible. At night, when the fire glows low and the walls of hide ripple in the wind, the shelter becomes more than physical. Shadows dance across its curved surface. Light and story flicker together. You see animals on the wall, shapes suggested by flame and imagination. Perhaps this is why some shelters bear decorations, painted lines, symbols carved into bone or wood. They are not art as luxury. They are art as extension of shelter itself, a way of saying, This space is not only for the body, but for the spirit. Far away, deep in caves, others painted animals in ochre and charcoal. But most did not live there. The cave was a temple, not a home. Home was softer, closer, lighter. Home was something you could build with your hands and carry in your memory. Think of what this means. Your survival does not depend on walls that last forever. It depends on your ability to make walls again and again, wherever the land allows. Permanence is replaced by skill. Ownership is replaced by knowledge. What you inherit is not property, but pattern. And that pattern keeps you alive. Now imagine the modern eye looking back. It sees these shelters as primitive, fragile, makeshift. But that is misunderstanding. These homes were efficient, adaptable, resilient. They left little trace because they were meant to. Their absence in the archaeological record is not a sign of absence in history. It is a sign of humility. To live lightly is to live long. You sit inside your shelter as evening comes. The hide walls rustle softly. The fire cracks, smoke slipping out the gap at the top. Around you, the group settles in. Some mend clothing with bone needles, others sharpen blades. A child falls asleep on a parent's lap. The elder hums a low song, the kind that has no words but still carries memory. You feel the warmth of bodies close, the security of the fire's glow, the comfort of walls shaped by hands that know the land. There are no bricks, no beams, no foundations, but there is safety. There is belonging. There is home. And when the season changes, you will take this shelter apart. The hides will be folded, the poles reused, the fire will be buried in ash. You will walk on, leaving almost nothing behind but footprints and memory. And when you return, the land will still be here. The knowledge will still be here. And with it, the pattern of shelter will rise again. This is the shape of home before walls. Not permanent, not monumental, but alive, adaptable, and enough. The morning begins not with hunger, but with awareness. Your body wakes before your stomach growls, attuned to the rhythm of the land. The embers glow faintly, smoke curling into the cold air. Outside, dew clings to grass blades, and the sound of cranes carries across the water. Food is not waiting in a cupboard. There is no pantry, no stored surplus, no shelves lined with jars. And yet, you are not lost. The world itself is the pantry, and you know where to look. You step outside with others. Your band of 20, maybe 30 people, moving as one body. Some stay behind. The oldest, the very young, those with healing wounds. They tend the fire, prepare tools, watch the camp. The rest scatter in groups, some toward the reeds, some toward the hills, some toward the stands of trees that bear nuts and berries when the season is right. There is no shopping list. There is memory. Your knowledge is vast, though you have no written notes. You know which plants sprout first after rain, which roots need roasting to be safe, which berries ripen sweet before birds take them. You know that one bark heals wounds while another burns the tongue. These are not guesses. They are inheritances. Your mother showed you where to dig tubers by the shape of the leaves. Your uncle corrected you when you pulled them too early. Your grandmother sang songs that mapped the cycles of flowering and fruiting. The land is not scenery, it is relationship. A tree is not just a tree. It is a signal, a source, a companion. A patch of nettles tells you water runs nearby. A bird's call warns you of a predator or points you to honey. The ground itself speaks if you know how to listen. And you do. By midday, baskets begin to fill, woven from reeds and gut-stitched for strength. They hold nuts, seeds, greens, roots. Women gather, yes, but so do men. Children trail behind, mimicking, learning, stuffing berries into their mouths, and being gently corrected when they choose the wrong ones. The stereotype of men as hunters and women as gatherers oversimplifies what is happening. Everyone gathers. Everyone knows. It is the foundation of life. And then there is meat. The hunters leave quietly at dawn. their bodies painted with ash to mask their scent. They carry spears tipped with stone blades, some armed with the atlatl, a carved lever that launches a spear farther, faster, with deadly precision. They read the earth like a script. A bent reed shows the passing of a gazelle. Fresh scat glistens, still warm. A broken twig tells direction. They follow silently, moving as a unit, communicating with gestures. The chase is not reckless. It is patient, deliberate, strategic. But meat is unpredictable. Days may pass without a successful hunt. The hunters return with stories more often than carcasses. And yet, when the strike lands, when a deer is cornered, when a wild boar falls, the camp transforms. The animal is butchered with practiced hands, each piece divided. Flesh is roasted, marrow sucked from bones, hides stretched for future shelters, sinew stripped for bowstrings. Nothing is wasted. The kill feeds not just stomachs, but stories. Children crowd close as elders explain the signs that led to the moment. The hunt becomes memory, and memory becomes survival. Still, the truth is this: most calories come from plants. Seeds ground on stones into coarse flour, roots boiled into mash, nuts cracked open with rocks. At Ahahud in the Levant, archaeologists found traces of more than 100 plant species used by foragers. Wild wheat, barley, figs, acorns. This is not random grazing. This is management, a quiet tending of the land. Seeds dropped near camp sprout again the next season. People return to the same stands of grain, the same groves of trees, the same berry patches. It is not yet farming, but it is tending. The beginnings of agriculture are already here, though no one calls it that. Your stomach fills slowly, not in one large feast, but in steady bites throughout the day. There is no breakfast, lunch, dinner. There is eating when food is found, shared when food is prepared, balanced across the group. You eat what is in season. Fish pulled fresh from the lake, greens crisp from the ground, roots dug with pointed sticks. In summer, fruit so sweet it drips down your chin. In winter, dried meat, smoked fish, nuts stored in woven bags. Hunger exists, yes, but famine is rare. Foragers, contrary to myth, often ate better than the farmers who came later. Their diets were diverse, rich in protein, fiber, and micronutrients. Their bones show fewer cavities, stronger joints, leaner muscles. The act of eating is not private. It is communal. A child chews a berry and spits it into her mother's hand, who chews it further before feeding it back. An elder gnaws at marrow and hands the bone to a teenager, who cracks it for the last scraps. A toddler tries to mimic the cracking and is laughed at, not cruelly, but warmly. Meals are lessons. Meals are bonds. Food is also medicine. You chew yarrow to soothe the stomach. You drink chamomile for calm. You smear crushed leaves on a wound to slow bleeding. These remedies are not superstition. They are memory encoded in story and practice. Archaeologists have found traces of medicinal plants in the plaque of ancient teeth, proof that knowledge lived in bodies long before it was written in books. And food is also spirit. Certain animals are not just eaten but honored. A fish might be returned whole to the water as offering. A first hunt might require ritual before meat is shared. Seeds are sprinkled in fire before planting to ask the land's permission. To eat is not only to consume. It is to participate in a cycle that is bigger than you. You are not conqueror. You are kin. As the sun tilts westward, people return to camp. Baskets of roots are emptied. Bundles of herbs are tied to dry. A fish is laid on the coals, skin crackling, oil sizzling. The air fills with smell and sound. The children crowd closer, waiting for pieces, impatient but respectful. Food is shared according to need, not wealth. The old eat first, the young next, the hunters last. No one starves while another feasts. Your survival is tied to theirs, and theirs to yours. Evening comes. The meal is not just sustenance. It is story. Around the fire, you do not say, "We ate." You say, "We found." You tell how the roots were dug, how the deer was tracked, how the honey stung your fingers but dripped golden on your tongue. You laugh about the child who grabbed the wrong berry. You honor the elder who remembered the right tree. You praise the hunter who threw true. Food becomes narrative. Narrative becomes memory. Memory becomes tomorrow's knowledge. You curl near the embers with a full belly. Outside, the stars blaze. Somewhere in the dark, animals move. Rivers run. Roots grow. Tomorrow you will rise again, not to command the land, but to walk with it. Read it. Taste it. The food will find you, and you will find it. And the pattern will continue, as it has for tens of thousands of years. This is eating before agriculture. This is nourishment before markets. This is food not as commodity, but as kinship, wild, shared, and remembered. Night falls without a clock. The sun drifts down behind the trees, and shadows stretch long across the clearing. The warmth of the day seeps into the soil. Birds fold their wings into silence. The air cools. And then, as it has for thousands of nights before this one, the fire takes its place at the center. You watch the embers stir, coaxed by practiced hands. A twig catches, then another, until flame leaps up and spills its orange light across faces gathered in a circle. The fire is not decoration. It is survival, signal, sanctuary, and shrine. Where there is fire, there is safety. Where there is fire, there is story. The circle around it is as old as memory. People lean close, skins wrapped tight, children tugging at their mother's arms, elders resting stiff bones against woven mats. It is here, at the center, that the camp becomes more than scattered bodies. It becomes a band, a family, a world bound by the crackle and smoke. The fire feeds more than your hunger. Yes, it cooks the meat, softens the roots, dries the berries. But it also wards off predators. The glint of eyes in the dark pauses at the line of flame. The sparks keep insects at bay. The warmth soothes weary muscles. It is as if the fire itself has agreed to protect you in exchange for care. And care is constant. Embers are banked with ash, coaxed to glow through the night, fed at dawn before cold returns. To lose the fire would be disaster. To keep it alive is the highest skill. But beyond warmth, beyond protection, the fire is presence. It shapes time itself. Day belongs to movement, gathering, hunting, making. Night belongs to flame. Around it, people slow, voices soften, laughter rises and falls. Stories unfurl not like speeches but like smoke, drifting, circling, reshaping as they are told again and again. Listen closely. The children do. Their eyes widen as an elder mimics the growl of a bear or the whistle of wind through reeds. Stories carry knowledge. Which river floods, which root burns the tongue, which ancestor once wandered too far and was lost. The tale is not just entertainment. It is survival encoded in memory, dressed in metaphor, carried across generations. Here, memory becomes archive. Not a scroll, not a tablet, not a book, but a voice, a gesture, a rhythm. The story does not end when one speaker falls silent. Another takes it up, adds a detail, twists a metaphor, ties it to a recent hunt. It grows, alive, shifting but enduring. Around the fire, knowledge becomes immortal. Music joins the night. A hollow bone flute carved with care releases a thin, haunting tune. Fingers tap rhythm on stone. A hum rises, then words, then laughter. Someone sways, someone claps, someone dances, shadows stretching tall against the shelter walls. The rhythm is not measured by instrument, but by heartbeat, by breath, by the rise and fall of flame. Archaeologists today uncover these flutes, carved tens of thousands of years ago, their notes still playable. The melodies that once echoed here echo still in our bones. The fire is also a mirror. Look into it, and you see not just flame but faces lit from below. Strange, flickering, almost otherworldly. Expressions sharpen. eyes gleam. You learn the moods of your kin in firelight, how grief looks in the shifting glow, how joy erupts in laughter that mingles with sparks. Some say even language itself may have been born here, in the quiet hours when gestures needed words, when the hush of night asked for story. Around fire, tongues loosened, symbols took shape, memory became sound. But the fire is not only human. Watch how smoke rises, how sparks climb into the sky. The people who sit beside you do not see random ash. They see messages, a spirit in the flame, a sign in the smoke. The crackle is a voice, the sparks a prayer. Fire is more than utility. It is cosmology, a sun brought to earth, a living bridge between what burns and what breathes. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, ochre carved with deliberate patterns lies buried beside fire traces from 75,000 years ago. The flames lit symbols etched on stone long before the first temple rose. At Dolny Vestanis in Moravia, clay figurines were fired beside hearths, some exploding in the heat, perhaps as offerings. Across continents, wherever humans tended flame, they paired it with meaning. Fire did not just illuminate, it sanctified. And so night is ritual, not in the sense of priests or altars, but in repetition, in rhythm. Every evening the circle forms, every evening the sparks rise, every evening voices soften and faces glow. Even silence is part of the ritual. Gazes fixed on flame, thoughts drifting, fears soothed. Modern science confirms what ancient hearts already knew. Firelight lowers heart rates, calms nerves, releases bonding hormones. It makes bodies trust each other. It makes danger outside feel distant. There are moments, too, when the fire becomes threshold. A hunter speaks of a dream, of an ancestor seen in sleep. An elder hums until breath turns shallow, eyes closed, swaying with the rhythm. Perhaps it is trance. Perhaps it is memory. Perhaps it is communion. No one questions. The fire holds the space. Children fall asleep first, curled against parents, lulled by warmth and rhythm. Elders doze, heads nodding, stories tapering into silence. The younger adults remain awake a little longer, poking coals, whispering plans for tomorrow, laughing softly. Sleep comes in shifts, not all at once. Someone is always half awake, always listening, always tending. The fire never sleeps alone. Look at the ground beneath the hearth. Layers of ash build up, year after year. Archaeologists find these layers compressed, stacked, a history in gray and black. Each layer is a night like this one, lived, told, remembered. Fire is continuity. Fire is the clock that does not measure hours but generations. And yet, the fire is not permanent. By morning, it will be embers again. By migration season, it will be abandoned, replaced by another fire in another camp. It leaves no walls, no monuments, only circles of stone, blackened soil, and memories. Perhaps that is its secret. It is both fragile and eternal. A flame can die in minutes, yet the fire has never gone out for humanity. Across continents, across millennia, it has leaped from hearth to hearth, carried in embers, kindled anew, never ending. So you sit now, eyes half closed, listening to the hum, watching sparks rise into the canopy of stars. You are not in a cave of silence, but in a cathedral of flame. The ceiling is the night sky. The pillars are the trees. The altar is the hearth. This is your temple. This is your safety. This is your memory. Tomorrow you will rise with the sun, gather roots, mend tools, chase prey. But tonight belongs to fire. Tonight you are reminded that to be human is not just to eat and move and build. It is to gather, to speak, to remember, to glow together in the dark. The fire at the center is not just heat or light. It is the first architecture, the first teacher, the first God. It is the center around which humanity became human. And when you finally drift into sleep, curled beside kin, the fire breathes still, its glow reflected in your dreams, its crackle echoing in your heartbeat. You will wake again before the sun. But tonight, you are safe. Tonight, the fire keeps watch. The fire dims, but the stories swell. In the circle of flame, your ancestors did not speak only of roots, hunts, or weather. They spoke of the beings that moved alongside them, creatures with powers so vast, so undeniable, that no human could ignore their presence. The first gods were not distant, invisible deities. They had fur, feathers, claws, tusks, wings. They walked in the same forests, drank from the same rivers, roared under the same stars. And perhaps they still are. When you see a wolf's eyes glowing in headlights, when you feel your chest tighten at the shadow of a hawk, when your breath catches at the sight of a deer frozen on the edge of the woods, you are remembering. Somewhere in your nervous system, older than cities, older than kings, older than gods carved in stone, the animal still whispers. That is why the oldest art is not of people but of beasts. That is why the first temples were not walls but caves painted with fur and horn. That is why the first gods were not distant creators, but the creatures that breathed the same air. The Paleolithic night was not silent. It was full of howls, hoots, cries, rustles. Each sound was a presence, a reminder that the world was alive, aware, attentive. You were not alone. You were never alone. The fire glowed at your center, but beyond it, eyes gleamed. Spirits watched, and the first gods waited in the shadows, patient, powerful, unforgettable. The people knew this. They painted it, carved it, sang it, lived it. The first gods were animals, and for a very long time, that was enough. You do not count your age in years. You counted in winters survived, in hunts joined, in trails walked until your legs burned. Childhood is not a stage here. It is a shadow. Small feet follow larger ones. Eyes watch, hands mimic, and learning begins not in lessons, but in life itself. There are no calendars, no schedules pinned to walls, no schools with bells. Parenting without clocks is not a lack of structure. It is structure woven into every hour of the day. The world itself becomes the teacher, and the band of humans surrounding you is the school. A baby is never alone. In this world, infants are carried skin to skin, swaddled against warmth, listening to the steady rhythm of breath and heartbeat. They are not placed in cribs in distant rooms, but rocked against shoulders, strapped with hides across backs, tucked into furs beside the fire. Their first classroom is the human body. Their first lessons are touch, warmth, voice. Anthropologists studying modern forager groups like the Hadza of Tanzania notice something striking. A baby is passed from one pair of arms to another dozens of times in a single day. Mothers, grandmothers, older siblings, even unrelated friends, all share in the carrying. This is called alloparenting, but in practice it is simply care woven through community. In the Paleolithic world, everyone is responsible. When the baby cries, it is not one woman's problem. It is the band's. And so, from the very first days of life, the child learns that belonging is not conditional. It is constant. You are held, soothed, fed, and rocked not because you earned it, but because your survival is the group's survival. The circle does not break. As toddlers grow, they begin to wander. No one shouts them back or fences them in. They toddle barefoot, tasting dirt, grabbing grass, chasing insects. Danger exists, yes, snakes, sharp rocks, thorns, but watchful eyes follow. Older children, barely bigger themselves, trail after the smaller ones, correcting gently, pulling them away from fire or cliff edge with quiet hands, not commands. This is apprenticeship disguised as play, and play itself is not trivial. A child's stick becomes a spear, a clump of clay becomes a figurine. Games of chase mimic hunts. Mud is smeared like ochre. The line between play and survival blurs, and in that blur lies education. By the age of 6 or 7, a child already knows which berries stain the tongue, which roots snap clean, which birds call before rain, No classroom could teach faster than curiosity tethered to necessity. Look closely at the tools left behind. Some scrapers, blades, and beads bear uneven edges, hesitant marks. These were not failures of adults. They were the practice attempts of children. Archaeology preserves not only the master's hand but the learner's. These imperfect flakes tell us that children were given real stone, real knives, real risk, because to hold danger was to learn respect. No plastic replicas, no toy substitutes. The world itself was the curriculum. Elders play their part too. In a world without books, without written history, the elderly are not discarded. They are living libraries. A grandmother's stories are more than entertainment. They are instruction about hunting trails, edible plants, past famines, ancestral spirits. Around the fire, children hear about the star that returns each spring, the river that floods every third season, the plant that heals a fever. Memory, wrapped in metaphor, enters their bones long before they grasp abstraction. And the old are not left behind. At Shanidar Cave in modern-day Iraq, the remains of a Neanderthal male more than 40 years old were found with a withered arm, blindness in one eye, and severe injuries. Yet he had lived for years beyond what his wounds should have allowed. This means he was cared for, fed, carried, protected. Compassion is older than agriculture, older than cities. To be human is to heal, to share, to extend the circle of care beyond utility. That same circle includes the sick and the wounded. Archaeologists find bones healed from fractures that would have left a person crippled without help. Evidence of arthritis in elders who must have been assisted to walk. Teeth worn down but jaws still fed soft foods. These are not anomalies. They are testimonies. Communities tended their weak because to abandon them was to abandon part of themselves. So what was parenting without clocks? It was not scheduled bedtimes or developmental charts. It was immersion. Children were present at hunts, at tool-making, at rituals. They watched women weave baskets and men knap flint. They played at the edges of dances, mimicked chants, learned steps. No one said, "Now is school." Every hour was school. No one said, "Now is family time." Every moment was family time. Even death was shared. Children saw it. They stood beside graves, scattered ochre, touched beads, wept into hides. They did not learn mortality through abstract lessons, but through presence. To bury the old, to lose the young. These were not shielded experiences. They were part of life's fabric. And in facing them, children absorbed resilience. Grief as ritual, sorrow as communal weight. Parenting without clocks meant there was no separation between generations. A 10-year-old might be soothing an infant while watching their grandmother crush seeds. A 5-year-old might trail a hunting party and return with stories, their eyes wide, their body alive with questions. Adults did not hover, correcting every move. They allowed space for error, for observation, for repetition. To fail was not shameful. To fail was the only way to learn. And what of affection? In this world, touch is constant. Hands guide, arms carry, laps cradle. The human nervous system, wired for proximity, grows calm under such conditions. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, surges in shared contact. Safety is not a concept. It is a sensation. The warmth of skin, the rhythm of heartbeat, the murmur of voices by firelight. Even discipline is woven differently. There are no punishments in the modern sense, no grounding, no solitary confinement. Instead, correction comes through story. A child who disobeys may hear a tale about a careless hunter who forgot to watch the wind and was trampled. A greedy child hears about one who ate the wrong berry and suffered. Morality is encoded in narrative, not rules. And so values are not imposed. They are absorbed, lived, remembered. In this system, parenting is not a job. It is a shared rhythm. The group raises the child raises the group. Each new life renews memory, carries the stories forward, ensures that the circle does not break. Close your eyes now. Imagine the sound of children's laughter at the edge of a camp, the soft hum of women grinding seeds, the click of stone against stone as tools are shaped. Imagine an elder's voice drifting like smoke. Once, long ago, the fox spoke to us. And in that moment, the child is not in class. They are in continuity. They are held not by a clock, but by a circle. This was parenting before schedules, before calendars, before walls. Parenting without clocks was parenting within kin. And it worked. It raised generations who survived ice ages, who crossed continents, who painted caves and carved flutes. It raised us. The circle still hums within you. When you crave community, when you long for stories by firelight, when you ache at the loneliness of modern walls, you are remembering. For most of human history, you were never raised by a clock. You were raised by a circle. You rise with the light, not because a bell rings or a schedule demands, but because the body stirs when dawn spills across the horizon. The word work does not exist here. What you do is life itself. Every act, gathering wood, carrying water, stripping fibers from bark, is woven into rhythm, not burden. There is no punch clock, no shift, no endless to-do list. The tasks are many, but they are shared. One person tends the fire, another checks the snares set the night before. Children wander the edges of camp, dragging sticks, learning by imitation. An elder sits, reshaping a chipped blade. These are not separate categories of labor, leisure, or play. They are all one flow. When you walk out into the grasslands, the pace is slow. Foragers rarely rush. They bend to pick berries, pry tubers from soil, notice the sound of birds. Every gesture is measured against patience. This is not frantic collection. It is choreography. A group spreads out like a net, each person contributing to the pattern of survival. Hands pluck, baskets fill, conversations ripple. Laughter carries across the brush. Work sounds like play because it often is. Anthropologists who study modern foragers like the Kung San of the Kalahari or the Hadza of Tanzania consistently find something astonishing. Adults spend only about 20 to 30 hours a week on subsistence tasks, 4 to 5 hours a day. The rest of the time is storytelling, resting, repairing, singing, being. Compared to the 40, 50, or 60-hour grind of modern economies, Paleolithic life was abundant in leisure. The myth of endless drudgery is false. This does not mean the tasks were easy. Grinding seeds with stone mortars takes strength. Knapping flint requires precision. Carrying meat over miles demands endurance. But because these tasks are embedded in rhythm, shared, seasonal, meaningful, they do not erode the spirit the way repetitive, abstract labor does today. Work is not imposed from outside. It arises from need, from belonging, from the day's unfolding. Picture midday in camp. Some people mend hides, smoothing seams with sinew. Others twist fibers into rope. A child hums while braiding grass into a toy. The hunters sit in shade, repairing spears, balancing shafts, attaching microliths with resin and pitch. Nothing here is done alone. Hands help hands. Jokes float. Songs begin. If a task is heavy, it becomes lighter when 2 or 3 share the weight. Even hunting, that most celebrated drama of the Paleolithic, was not daily toil, but periodic event. Most calories came from plants. Roots, seeds, fruits, nuts. Meat was precious, unpredictable, a feast when it came, a story when it did not. The hunt required coordination. One group drives, another waits in ambush. Spears are thrown, sometimes at great risk. But afterward, when the carcass is skinned, roasted, divided, the victory is not individual. It is communal. Everyone eats. This rhythm prevents burnout. When food is abundant, work slows. When scarcity presses, effort intensifies. The cycle is flexible, unlike modern jobs that demand constant output regardless of season. In the Paleolithic, You move with the world, not against it. And still, even the hardest tasks carry beauty. Grinding pigments to paint cave walls is not productive. Carving flutes from bone does not fill stomachs. Yet these were done with care, with time, with devotion. Utility and art are not separated. Repairing a spear is also engraving it. Stretching a hide is also decorating it. The same hands that work also create, transforming necessity into meaning. Your body reflects this rhythm. Muscles are dense from walking, squatting, climbing. Joints carry the imprint of varied motion, not repetitive strain. Compare this to the first farmers of the Neolithic. Their skeletons show more arthritis, more malnutrition, more stress from grinding endless grain. Foragers, though, moved freely across landscapes, bodies shaped by diverse activity. Work kept them strong without breaking them. And so the day unfolds not as hours blocked, but as pulses. Forage in the morning, rest at noon, return with baskets, share food, mend tools, tell stories. Evening brings songs, repair, laughter. Work ends when it ends, not when a clock allows. Children join without being told. A girl braids fibers while her mother twists rope. A boy carries sticks, pretending they are spears. No one says, "Do your chores." They are already folded into rhythm, imitating, absorbing. Apprenticeship is not formal. It is constant. Even the concept of ownership does not weigh on these tasks. Tools are often shared. Food is divided. Skills flow freely. You do not hoard knowledge about which roots heal fever. You teach, because survival depends on everyone knowing. Work is not competition. It is continuity. And when the sun lowers, there is no rush to finish before deadline. The fire will be tended. The baskets will be full enough. The tools will be sharp enough. Perfection is not demanded. Presence is. And presence is enough. From the outside, modern minds call this primitive. But perhaps it is modern life that is primitive in its brutality. Bending bodies into hours, dividing tasks into meaningless fragments, isolating effort from joy. In the Paleolithic world, work was not separate from being. It was rhythm, not labor. It is late, and the world around you is quiet. The screens are dim, the clocks keep their steady tick, and the noise of modern life has thinned into background hum. You could be anywhere. A dark apartment, a silent bedroom, a couch still warm from your presence. But tonight, your mind is being asked to travel somewhere older, far older than the sound of traffic outside your window. Close your eyes, if you like. Let the walls around you blur. Let the light of your room dissolve into a softer glow. Imagine instead the shimmer of embers, orange, fading, alive. A fire smolders beside you, its warmth brushing your skin. There are no street lamps, no alarms, no blue glow of phones demanding attention. Only this circle of warmth, only this thin shield of flame between you and the great night of the world. You wake before the sun, but not because an alarm has ordered you to. You wake because the fire needs feeding. The air is cool and smells of ash, hide, and earth. The roof above you is not plaster and beam, but bent willow branches and stretched animal skin, swaying faintly with the wind. This is no rare camping trip, no wilderness escape. This is your life, and it has been the life of your ancestors for tens of thousands of years. The year is not 2025. It is not even 500 or 1000 BCE. It is closer to 10,000 BCE, long before walls rose, before clocks began to measure us, before kings and cities and roads. 99% of human history lies here, in this dim firelight, in this rhythm of waking with embers and sleeping with stars. The world of concrete, engines, and schedules is only a flicker compared to the long fire of foraging life. The silence of this world is not empty. It hums with sound if you listen closely. The hiss of fire, the breath of kin asleep beside you, the far cry of a bird stirring too early. The rhythms are slow, but they are not lifeless. They are alive in a way our hurried hours rarely allow. Time is not carved into minutes. It is felt in pulses, the cooling of embers, the paling of the sky, the return of light. And here is the truth most of us forget. For more than 95% of the time, humans have walked this earth. We lived like this, wandering, gathering, hunting, tending, remembering. Before a city was ever built, before a god was carved, before a wall divided one people from another, there was only this: a body stirring in the dark, another hand feeding the fire, and the unbroken thread of memory tying morning to morning. Think of your life now. Perhaps you live in a house with doors and locks. Perhaps you have food in the fridge and a clock that orders your day. You call that stability. But what if stability once meant something else? Not permanence, but presence. Not walls, but warmth. The people of 10,000 BCE were not rushing toward anything. They were not behind us on some ladder of progress. They were simply alive as we are now, though in a rhythm that feels alien to our eyes and ears. This prologue is an invitation to slow down, to step outside the story of progress and remember the older story, the one written not in books or screens, but in ash, in footprints, in the circles around fire. Tonight, we are not racing forward, we are walking back. Back into a time before walls, before kings, before ours. A time when the only architecture was firelight and memory, when knowledge was carried in the body, when the night sky was both map and cathedral. As the fire at your side is fed and the embers glow brighter, you feel it. The faint recognition. Something in your nervous system remembers this. Something in your bones knows this rhythm. You were not born for walls alone. You were not born for ticking clocks. You were born for the circle of fire, for the stories that bend time into memory, for the slow dawn before the first cities existed. And so we begin. The fire beside you breathes again, flames licking the edges of last night's wood. The warmth draws you fully awake, not with the shrill insistence of an alarm, not with the red glow of digits declaring you late. You wake because the world is stirring, and your body is part of that stirring. The sky above is still a deep indigo, the kind of blue that bruises into black at the edges. You stretch your legs, feeling the coolness of earth beneath you. The ground is not carpet or concrete. It is soil pressed flat by many nights of sleeping bodies. A mat of woven reeds softens your place. Beside you, a child stirs in their hide covering, murmuring but not yet awake. Across the circle, an elder coughs softly and rises with practiced care. No one tells them it is time. There is no clock here, but still, the day begins. So tonight, as you close your eyes, feel your body remember the urge to move slowly, the longing to share effort, the desire for tasks that matter, done with hands, done with kin. Beneath your modern fatigue lies an older rhythm, one that once guided every day for 95% of human history. It whispers still. Work is not supposed to break you. It is supposed to carry you, like a song. The fire burns low, sparks drifting into the night. Around its edge, humans lie close, breath to breath, warmth to warmth. But you are not the only creature here. At the fringe of the glow, just beyond the circle, two yellow eyes gleam. Not predator, not prey, something in between. A shadow with fur, watching, waiting. It is not the first time. For many nights now, wolves have lingered near the camp. Some growl, some circle wide. But a few, smaller, calmer, less quick to bare teeth, stay. They do not charge, they do not flee. They hover like questions. Why are they here? Why do they not attack? And why do you not chase them away? At first, it is scraps. A bone tossed into the dark, marrow still rich, a fish skin left behind. The boldest of them creep closer, noses twitching, paws tentative. Hunger makes them brave. The humans let them take it. Another night, another bone, then another. Trust, if such a word existed here, begins like this. Slowly, in silence, with food. Over time, something shifts. These watchers stop circling. They begin to linger nearer the fire, not just for scraps, but for warmth. Their ears twitch at the rustle of leaves, warning the camp before danger approaches. Their noses lead to hidden dens of small game. At dawn, when you wait to feed the embers, one of them is already there, stretched thin, belly pressed to earth, eyes half closed but watchful still. You did not invite it, but it stayed. This is not conquest. You did not domesticate the wolf by force. You coexisted with the ones who chose proximity. The bold and hostile drifted back into the forest. The cautious and curious remained. Across generations, something new emerged. Not wolf, not human's pet, but dog. Archaeologists today read this story in bones. At Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, a 14,000-year-old burial cradled human and dog together, side by side. The dog had been sick in life, jaw disease that would have made feeding difficult. Yet it lived long, which means someone cared. Someone fed it when it could not hunt. That grave, those bones, whisper the truth. These animals were not tools. They were companions. In Siberia, at Paleolithic sites, dog remains are found among human ones. Teeth worn not from tearing carcasses, but from chewing cooked scraps. In the Near East, skeletons of small, short-snouted canines bear marks of deliberate burial, curled as if sleeping by a hearth. These are not livestock graves. These are gestures of mourning. The people did not just eat with dogs. They remembered them. Why did this bond matter? Because survival itself began to bend around it. A dog's nose caught scents you could not. Their ears flicked at sounds you missed. When they barked, danger was near. When they howled, you listened to the night differently. They were scouts, guards, partners. But they were also something rarer. Warmth at your side, a heartbeat not your own, a presence that steadied. The relationship was not ownership. There were no leashes, no collars, no kennels. The dog could leave if it wished, and sometimes it did. The pack still called, but many stayed. They found something here, a circle of fire, food shared, eyes that met theirs not only with caution but with recognition. Modern science shows what your ancestors already felt. When human and dog lock eyes, both bodies release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. This was true then as it is now. A feedback loop of affection, trust, companionship. You looked into a dog's eyes and felt less alone. And perhaps they looked into yours and felt the same. At the hunt, this bond became visible. A dog's speed flushed deer toward spears. Its nose tracked the hidden trail of boar. Its bark drove prey into waiting hands. But even when no kill was made, the presence remained valuable. Around the camp, children played with pups. Elders stroked coarse fur. Nights felt less haunted with ears beyond human ones listening. Consider this. Cats would come later, tied to grain stores and settled towns. Livestock, goats, sheep, cattle, would follow after farming. But the dog was first, the only creature to walk beside humans before cities, before walls, before gods carved in stone. When you think of man's best friend, know this. That bond is older than agriculture, older than temples, older than writing. And perhaps it changed us. To care for a dog that could not feed itself required empathy. To trust a creature outside your own kind required imagination. To bury a dog with grave goods meant memory had expanded to include not just kin but another species. Maybe the dog taught us tenderness. Maybe it made us more human. Imagine tonight, as you lie by the embers, one of them curls near your legs. Its breath slows. Its warmth seeps into yours. Around you, your band sleeps. Beyond, the dark hums with insects and distant predators. But here, at the edge of firelight, is a companion who will stir if danger nears, who will follow at dawn, who will sit and watch without asking for more than presence. This is not ownership. This is not mastery. This is friendship at its most elemental. a pact written not on stone but in fur, in gaze, in the silent choice to stay. And in that choice, something ancient is born. The fire has dimmed to coals. Shadows lengthen along the cave mouth. You step inside, where the air cools and the world narrows to stone and silence. The deeper you go, the darker it becomes, until the only light is the flicker of a torch, painting the walls in trembling orange. And then, there they are. Horses, red and black, galloping in curves across limestone. Bison with shoulders like mountains, horns lowered, as if charging straight through the wall. Lions, bears, mammoths, rhinos, an entire menagerie of power and grace, alive in charcoal, ochre, and manganese black. They move as the flame moves. They breathe as the shadows breathe. They are not decoration. They are presence. Tens of thousands of years ago, humans crawled deep into caves, places too dark, too cold, too awkward for daily living, and left these marks. Lascaux in France, Chauvet, older still, Sulawesi in Indonesia, where stenciled handprints stretch across stone like echoes of touch. These were not idle doodles. They were chosen. They were repeated. They were remembered. Why? Not for art in the way we understand art, not for galleries or applause. These were prayers, offerings, invocations. To paint the beast was to summon it, to honor it, perhaps to ask forgiveness for taking its life. In Chauvet, lions prowl in sequence, as if telling a story. In Lascaux, a great black bull towers over everything, its sheer size demanding reverence. In Sulawesi, half-human, half-animal figures hint at myth, transformation, trance. You realize something here. The first gods were not men with thrones. They were animals. Beasts with claws, wings, horns, and power far beyond human strength. And in painting them, early humans admitted both fear and awe. They were not masters of the earth. They were participants in it. To draw a stag was to recognize its spirit. To trace a bison was to acknowledge dependence. To mark your own hand beside them was to place yourself in that same circle of life. The act itself was ritual. Imagine crawling into these chambers, torch in hand, heart racing in the dark. You squeeze through narrow tunnels, crawl on your belly, scrape knees against stone, all to reach a hidden chamber where the wall awaits. A shaman perhaps leads the way, or perhaps a child, curious and daring, follows the flicker. At the center, the group gathers. The torchlight throws the animals into motion. They leap, they turn, they vanish and reappear with every sway of flame. This is cinema before cameras, theater before scripts. Some archaeologists suggest trance was involved. Dances, drumming, breath held until the world tilted, visions spilling across stone. Others see teaching, a way to pass down knowledge of animal behavior, herd patterns, the anatomy of prey. But even the most practical explanation cannot strip away the awe. These paintings are more than information. They are devotion. And then there are the hybrids, the therianthropes, human bodies with animal heads, men with antlers, figures with tails, wings, or beaks. They blur the line between human and beast, suggesting not hierarchy but fluidity. Perhaps the painter believed transformation was possible, that spirit could cross boundaries. Perhaps the cave itself was a womb where such metamorphosis began. To paint was not to capture but to become. Notice what is absent. Few landscapes, few trees, few stars. The human figure, when it appears, is clumsy, incomplete. But the animals, oh, the animals are alive. The focus tells you what mattered. The human was not yet the center of the story. The beast was. The world was shared, not dominated. Across cultures, echoes of this animism persist. Among the San of southern Africa, stories speak of trickster animals, half spirit, half creature. Among the Ojibwe of North America, dreams of animals are sacred messages. These beliefs are not primitive. They are continuous, carrying the same thread that wound through the caves of Europe and Asia. They tell us the earliest cosmology was not built on walls or thrones. It was built on fur, feather, claw, and the shared breath of living things. And the caves themselves, why so deep? Why risk crawling through darkness to leave a mark no one would casually see? Perhaps because the cave was not just space, it was symbol. A descent into the earth, into the womb, into mystery. To paint inside was to step between worlds, to meet ancestors or spirits in their own chamber. The flicker of torchlight on damp rock was not mere light. It was transformation. Consider too the time invested. At Sungir in Russia, 2 children were buried with thousands of ivory beads, each painstakingly carved. At Lascaux, the paintings stretch across chambers, layers upon layers of pigment. This was not survival work. It was something else. Meaning work, symbol work. A need as pressing as food. Think of it this way. Before fields, before temples, before kings, the first great monuments were not walls. They were images of animals, repeated endlessly, painted larger than life. This tells you something profound. Before civilization, there was reverence. Before politics, there was relationship. The beasts were not trophies. They were gods. So tonight, as you drift in the half-dark of your room, imagine lying on your back in a cave 20,000 years ago. The walls alive with bulls and deer, their forms rippling with flame. A shaman's breath thick in the air. Children whispering. Elders humming. Someone reaches out and places their hand against the wall, spraying pigment through hollow bone, leaving a red outline of fingers. That handprint lingers still across millennia. It says, I was here. I belonged. I remembered. And in that gesture, it is the oldest confession of humanity, that we are not alone, that our story is shared, that even in silence we long to leave a mark beside the beasts who gave us life. The night deepens. The fire crackles. You've traveled through shelters, through caves, through the painted world of beasts and spirits. Now imagine climbing a dry hill in southeastern Anatolia. The ground is hard, scattered with flint flakes, limestone chips, and the bones of animals long gone. There are no villages here, no houses, no plowed fields. The year is 9600 BCE, thousands of years before the first cities, and yet on this hill, humans carved a temple from stone. Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill, a place that should not exist, but does. You walk among circles of towering pillars, some as tall as 16 feet, weighing many tons. They rise from the earth like guardians, smooth-faced, with arms carved along their sides and hands clasped at their fronts. Their surfaces are alive with animals. Foxes slinking, vultures looming, snakes twisting, scorpions poised. These stones are not random. They are arranged, aligned, intentional. And here is the mystery. The people who built this were not farmers. They were still hunter-gatherers, moving with herds and seasons, carrying what they owned. No plows, no pottery, no cities. Conventional wisdom once said people had to farm before they could build temples, but Göbekli Tepe whispers another order. Perhaps people built temples first, and farming came after. Perhaps the hunger for meaning came before the hunger for grain. You picture the gathering. Dozens, maybe hundreds, climbing the hill from valleys below. They bring stone tools, ropes, and determination. They carve limestone blocks with nothing but flint. They drag pillars weighing tons without wheels, without beasts of burden. They raise them upright, slot them into circles, set a pair in the center, taller than the rest. These two stand like presences, watching, embodying ancestors, gods, or both. Around them, smaller pillars form the ring, each carved with beasts that prowl the stone, as if memory itself had taken shape. The fox appears again and again, clever, liminal. Vultures hover, perhaps mediators between life and death. Snakes slither, scorpions threaten. The images repeat, not decoration but invocation. There is no evidence of daily living here. No hearths, no houses, no trash pits. This was not a village. It was a gathering place, a sanctuary, a temple without a city, a monument without a kingdom. And the question lingers, why? Some say it was a place of feasting. Archaeologists have found vast amounts of animal bones, especially gazelle, butchered and discarded in layers. Perhaps entire bands gathered here for ritual meals, binding themselves through food and story. Others see funerary rites. At later Neolithic sites, vultures appear linked to death, perhaps as psychopomps, carriers of souls. Maybe Göbekli Tepe was a place where the living met the dead, where bones were cleaned and spirits released. Still others imagine astronomical alignments, the circles mirroring constellations, the carvings marking cycles in the sky. The truth may be all of these, or something we cannot name. What matters is this. Long before walls, before writing, before kings, humans gathered to carve meaning into stone. And in doing so, they changed themselves. You kneel at the base of one pillar, run your hand along the carved relief of a lion. The grooves are deliberate, deep. Imagine the hours spent, the repetitions, the rhythm of stone on stone. These were not idle scratches. They were promises, a memory etched into rock so it could outlive flesh. And then, after centuries of use, the people buried it, deliberately, layer upon layer of rubble, animal bones, tools, debris. They filled the circles until the pillars were hidden, sealed. Why would they bury what they had labored so hard to build? Perhaps it was closure, a ritual of ending. Perhaps the site's power was too great to leave exposed. Perhaps the world itself was shifting. The younger Dryas ending, climate warming, plants growing differently, herds moving elsewhere. Agriculture was stirring. A new way of life was coming. Maybe they buried the temple because its time was done. But in burying it, they preserved it. And millennia later, when archaeologists uncovered the circles, the carvings still stared back with fresh precision, as if the stone itself had been waiting. Pause for a moment. Think of what this means. At Göbekli Tepe, humans came together not for survival alone, but for ceremony, for memory, for awe. They shaped stone into story, and story into permanence. They built not because they had surplus food or a stable home. They built because they had vision, because they needed a place to gather, to remember, to become more than individuals. The implications ripple outward. The first great monuments were not palaces. They were not storehouses. They were circles of stone filled with animals, symbols, spirits. This suggests something staggering. Civilization may not have begun with farming. It may have begun with myth, with ritual, with the need to stand together and say, this matters. The stones themselves testify. They stand not as walls of defense, but as invitations, open rings with space for people to enter, to circle, to witness. Their shape is communal, not controlling. Their carvings speak not of ownership, but of relationship. Foxes, vultures, snakes, the same companions painted in caves. Here they are etched forever, a pantheon of beasts turned to stone. And what of the human figures? Few appear, but when they do, they are abstract. The central T-shaped pillars bear arms, hands, belts. They are human and not human. Ancestors, spirits, presences without faces. It is as if to carve the full human would be too much, too presumptuous. Instead, the human is suggested, outlined, humbled beside the animals. This humility is striking. In a world before cities, before hierarchies, the sacred was not a king on a throne. It was a circle of stone, a fox carved in relief, a vulture spreading its wings. It was not domination. It was relationship. The more you linger, the more you realize that Göbekli Tepe is not just stone. It is memory fossilized. It tells us that long before we measured harvests, we measured meaning. Long before we stored grain, we stored stories. Long before we claimed land, we claimed belonging in circles beneath the stars. And so the chapter of fire and beast, of cave and clan, begins to shift. Humans who once wandered now began to pause, to return to the same places, to gather, to feast, to carve. And from those gatherings, agriculture would soon follow. The Neolithic would dawn, walls would rise, clocks would tick. But at the root of it all lies this hill, this circle of pillars, this memory of a world where animals were gods, where stone could hold story, and where humans first stood together to build not for survival, but for spirit. So when you picture the beginning of civilization, do not picture only fields and farmers. Picture this, a circle of stone on a barren hill, foxes and snakes etched into pillars, humans gathered in awe. A temple without a city, a story told in rock, a memory buried, waiting for us to uncover it and remember what mattered before we forgot. The fire is still warm, but the world around it is about to change. For tens of thousands of years, people moved with the rhythm of seasons, following herds, gathering roots, carrying little, leaving little. Their lives were mobile, cyclical, light. But somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, about 10,000 years ago, a quiet shift began. It did not roar like conquest. It crept like seeds dropped into soil. It began with wheat. You can picture it. A band of foragers returning again and again to the same valley. Wild grasses grow thick along the slopes. Wheat, barley, rye. They harvest by hand, scattering seeds as they go. And then the following season, something curious happens. The patches near camp grow thicker. The people notice. They begin to return, to linger, to scatter a little more seed, to clear a little more ground. This is the Neolithic revolution. But from the inside, it doesn't feel like revolution. It feels like convenience, a little less wandering, a little more certainty. And yet, hidden inside that convenience is a trap. Foragers had once eaten a varied diet. Nuts, berries, roots, fish, game, honey. The bones of Paleolithic people show strong teeth, tall stature, dense muscles. But once grain became the anchor, diversity shrank. Carbohydrates filled bellies, but cavities spread. Malnutrition appeared in skeletons for the first time at scale. Wheat gave calories, but it narrowed life. And it demanded work. To sow meant to weed. To weed meant to guard. To guard meant to stay. The rhythm of following herds was replaced by the grind of fields. Hours bent over plants. Days grinding grain between stones. The shoulders of Neolithic women show grooves from this endless motion. Arthritis etched itself into bones long before old age. Where Paleolithic bands worked perhaps 20 hours a week for survival, farmers toiled for 60. The surplus that farming promised came at a cost. You could grow more food in good years, yes, but in bad years, the risk multiplied. One failed harvest meant famine. Foragers had options. Farmers had dependents. The bounty of wheat was also its burden. And then came storage. Surplus food could not be carried. It had to be kept. Storehouses rose, and with them came a new fear: loss. Rats gnawed. Thieves lurked. Neighbors coveted. For the first time, humans began to build walls. At Jericho, around 8000 BCE, those walls still stand. Stone towers and ramparts meant not for warmth but for defense. The message is clear. What is mine is not yours. Inside is safety. Outside is threat. Wheat had given people roots, but those roots required protection. And protection required division. Inequality followed. In mobile bands, prestige came from skill. Who could track, who could heal, who could tell the best story around the fire. But in farming villages, prestige came from surplus. From how much grain you controlled, how many animals you owned, how much land your family could claim. Graves from early farming communities show the change. Some filled with beads, tools, ornaments, others nearly bare. Status had become material, and time itself bent. Foragers had lived by cycles, seasons, moons, migrations. Farmers lived by schedules. The wheat did not wait. It had to be planted, watered, guarded, harvested. The sun became a clock. The year became a ledger. Anxiety entered human life in a new form. What if the rains do not come? What if locusts devour the crop? What if neighbors take what we stored? The myth of progress says this was an ascent, a step up from wild chaos into civilization. But the bones tell another story. Farmers were shorter, weaker, sicker than their foraging ancestors. The grain was heavy on their backs and in their bellies. The surplus was real, but so was the stress. And yet, people stayed. Why? Because farming didn't just grow food. It grew permanence. With permanence came identity, ancestry, inheritance. A field tilled by your father could be passed to you. A house built in mud brick could be repaired year after year. A wall could mark not just defense, but belonging. And the sacred shifted too. The painted caves gave way to plastered shrines. At Stonehenge, a vast settlement in Anatolia, houses pressed against each other, entered by ladders through the roofs. Inside, walls bore bull skulls, plaster breasts, painted leopards. The wild was brought indoors, mounted, displayed. The gods moved from animals to symbols of fertility, dominance, order. The mystery was tamed, caged inside walls of mud and plaster. This is why some call it the Neolithic trap. For in choosing wheat, humans chose weight. The weight of labor, the weight of storage, the weight of walls. And once chosen, it was hard to unchoose. Farming supported more mouths, which meant more children, which meant more need for grain. The cycle reinforced itself. And with surplus came armies. With armies came empires. With empires came kings who carved their names into stone. All of that. Every city, every monument, every ledger of conquest rests on that first shift, when people bent their backs to wheat. But you, sitting now by the fire, can still feel the echo of what was lost. The freedom of movement, the lightness of carrying little, the ease of lying down to sleep with only stars overhead. For 95% of human history, that was normal. Wheat changed it in less than one. So as you drift in the glow, remember, progress is not always a ladder. Sometimes it is a circle broken, a rhythm interrupted. The first farmers traded rhythm for routine, mystery for management, belonging for burden. They did not know it, but they had stepped into a trap. And we, you and I, still live inside it. Our calendars, our alarms, our storage, our stress, they are all descendants of wheat. But tonight, in this quiet corner of memory, you can set it down. Let the fire burn slow. Let the night return to cycles, not clocks. Let the earth breathe without walls. Let your body remember what it once knew, before the weight of wheat bent us all. The fire burns low, and you feel it. Time itself, not as seconds or hours, but as warmth fading, as breath slowing, as darkness deepening. For almost all of human history, this was enough. Time was not something you counted. It was something you felt. The moon waxed and waned. The rains came and left. The stars circled overhead. You rose when light returned. You rested when it fled. But farming changed that. When wheat entered human life, so did schedules. The seed had to go in the soil at the right moment, or the crop would fail. Water had to flow in measured turns, or the stalks would wither. Harvest could not wait, or the grain would spoil. Suddenly, cycles of sun and season were not just gentle rhythms. They became deadlines. And with deadlines came anxiety. The first calendars were not carved in stone to honor gods. They were scratched, etched, notched to track the sky. When the floods would rise, when the lambs would drop, when the grain must be planted. Time hardened. It became something to keep. Imagine standing on a plain near the Tigris River, 6,000 years ago. The fields are sown, but clouds hesitate. You look upward, searching not for beauty, but for prediction. The stars are no longer only stories. They are signals. Priests rise as early astronomers, watching the heavens for patterns to guide the plow. At Nabta Playa in the Nubian desert, even before cities, nomads raised stone circles aligned with solstices. These were not mere shrines. They were clocks. At Stonehenge, centuries later, the pillars cast shadows that told people when to feast, when to sow, when to mourn. The sky had become a calendar. But what began as guidance became governance. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets bear the earliest writing. They are not poems, not myths, not confessions. They are tallies, sheep owed, grain delivered, rations distributed. Writing itself was born to measure time and debt, to record who met their quota and who did not. The calendar turned myth into management. Think of it. Once, time was shared, a circle of memory around fire. Now it was carved into units. Days, months, years. Your worth could be counted, your labor measured. A missed planting was no longer just a loss. It was failure, punishable by hunger, or worse, by rulers who demanded tribute. At Jericho, at Uruk, at Memphis, time was tied to walls. Temples and palaces became keepers of the calendar. Priests declared the holy days, not the sky itself. Kings claimed descent from gods who controlled the turning of seasons. The power to mark time became the power to rule. And the cage closed tighter. By the 3rd millennium BCE, the Egyptians had a civil calendar of 365 days. The Babylonians marked weeks of 7, named for planets. The Mayans counted days in cycles so vast they spanned centuries. Everywhere, the pulse of life was no longer just felt in the body. It was fixed in systems. What had once been mystery became mathematics. But something else changed too. People began to age differently. In a foraging world, you were as old as your memory, your strength, your winters lived. There were no birthdays, no numbers ticking forward. In a calendrical world, you could be measured in years. You could be declared young or old by count, not by presence. Mortality gained numbers. Anxiety sharpened. The grain of wheat grew heavy not only in the fields but in the mind. And then came clocks. At first, they were shadows. Sundials etched in stone, telling when to pray, when to work, when to eat. Then they were water dripping through calibrated vessels, time flowing in silence. Later, mechanical gears ticked in monasteries, marking hours for prayer. Eventually, bells rang through villages, calling peasants to fields at dawn, pulling them back at dusk. The fire's soft glow was replaced by the iron strike of hours. Time no longer circled, it marched. And with the march came a new kind of cage. You could be late. You could be early. You could fall behind. Farmers had quotas. Soldiers had watches. Builders had schedules. The clock turned human life into slots, into tasks, into obligations. What once had been lived as rhythm became enforced as regimen. And yet you can still feel the older memory beneath it. When power goes out, when phones die, when you sit by a flame or stare at the moon, you feel time loosen again. You feel it return to breath and cycle. You feel the cage rattle. The Paleolithic mind inside you still longs for circles, not lines. For the slow patience of seasons, not the sharp ticks of hours. For time as a companion, not a master. But history rarely loosens its grip. Once rulers learned to count time, they learned to command it. Festivals, taxes, harvests, wars, all scheduled, all measured. Writing, money, law, all entwined with the calendar. To live in the Neolithic world was to live in a cage of time, a cage invisible, but binding. And yet, listen carefully. You are not trapped tonight. You can let the fire slow. You can let the clock slip. You can remember what your ancestors once knew. That time is not only to be counted, it is also to be felt, to be breathed, to be shared. Close your eyes. The cage fades. The calendar crumbles. The fire glows. And for one soft moment, you are back before clocks, before calendars, before walls, when time was not a burden, but a circle of stars. The fire is almost out now. A thin smoke rises, curling upward into the night, as if trying to carry the last words of the day into the stars. Around you, the village, no longer a band, no longer a camp, but a village, rests behind walls. It is quieter here than the wild, but the silence feels different. It is heavy, not open. It is the silence of things enclosed. This is the shadow cast by civilization. When people first stayed, when they planted wheat and built walls, they believed they were trading uncertainty for stability. But what they also planted was weight, the weight of permanence. The grain demanded attention year after year. The walls demanded defense. The gods demanded rituals. And slowly, the rhythms of life that once flowed with wind and season were fixed to the stone and the soil. The Paleolithic was a long dawn of circles. The Neolithic was a long shadow of lines. You can feel it in your bones. Once, you rose when the sun did, and if you woke in the night, you listened to the fire crackle, to the breath of kin. Now, you wake to bells, to schedules, to expectations that march regardless of the sky. The shadow lengthens. Civilization brings abundance, yes. It brings granaries filled, cities rising, temples echoing with song. But it also brings hierarchy. The bones tell the story. In egalitarian bands, graves held little difference between one person and the next. In early cities, some are buried with gold, others with nothing. The shadow of inequality falls long. Civilization brings safety from hunger, yes. But it also brings war. Walls protect, but they also provoke. To defend land is to claim it. To claim it is to invite rivals. And so the same hands that once shaped flint for hunting now shape bronze for killing. The shadow deepens. And still, beneath the shadow, memory lingers. Every human alive today carries it. A nervous system tuned for firelight, and kinship still beats beneath the noise of engines and screens. You feel it when you walk barefoot on grass, when you gather in circles, when you stare at flames or stars. It is the old rhythm stirring, whispering through the long shadow. Civilization has given us clocks, calendars, monuments, and markets, but it has also given us longing. The ache for something older, slower, truer. It is why camping feels like healing, why silence feels sacred, why stories still hold us in the dark. The long shadow is not only burden, it is also reminder. It reminds us that walls are recent, that wheat is recent, that time itself, measured, counted, cage, is recent. For 99% of our species' story, we lived without them. We lived as part of the world, not apart from it. And perhaps that memory is why the shadow cannot fully consume us. Even inside cities, even with clocks ticking, humans still gather around light. We light candles on tables, fires in hearths, lanterns in streets. We create circles again, even in a world of lines. Look closely, and you see resistance everywhere. Children drawing in dirt, friends laughing late at night, lovers watching sunsets with no rush to move. These are cracks in the shadow, small fires still burning. They are echoes of the long past carried forward. Civilization is heavy, but memory is stubborn. And that is where you find hope. Not in escaping the shadow. It is too long, too permanent for that. But in remembering what lies beneath it. The circle around the fire. The rhythm of breath. The closeness of kin. The simplicity of knowing the land by heart. The long shadow stretches across history, across your own life. It whispers of walls, of work, of worry. But if you pause, if you close your eyes, if you breathe, you can still feel the older light, the fire that never fully went out. So let this be the last thought as you drift tonight. Civilization may have caged time, may have buried memory, may have cast its shadow across the earth. But inside you, older than all of it, lives the ember of story, of rhythm, of circle. And no shadow, however long, can extinguish that. The night is deepest now. The fire has burned down to its final coals, red veins pulsing in the ash. You sit with it, watching the faint glow fade, listening to the hush that follows. Civilization may have built walls, calendars, and clocks, but here, in this last moment, you feel something older, a whisper that has never left. You began this journey before walls, before cities, before time was a cage. You walked with small bands along rivers and grasslands. You felt the weight of a mammoth bone shelter, the hum of flutes carved from vulture bone, the warmth of fire shared with kin, the watchful eyes of painted beasts glowing in torchlight. You saw the first dogs curl at human feet, and the first stones raised in circles to remember gods who were also animals. And then you felt the shift, the planting of seeds, the rise of walls, the measure of days, the burden of permanence. The shadow grew long, and with it came the weight of wheat, of ownership, of worry. Civilization carried wonders, yes, but also a new kind of hunger, the hunger for more, the hunger for control. Yet here, as the fire sighs, you see that none of it ever truly vanished. The ember is still alive in you. Every time you pause to watch the stars, you are remembering. Every time you gather in circles, you are remembering. Every time you tell a story, not on paper, not on a screen, but aloud, with voice and breath, you are remembering. Civilization may have layered walls and noise and numbers around you, but the body, the nervous system, the ancient rhythm of your blood, they all still belong to the fire. This is why silence feels holy, why camping feels like home, why the smell of wood smoke can pull you instantly into memory. These are not quirks. They are your inheritance. They are the Paleolithic still living in your skin. You awake tomorrow into the world of alarms and calendars, but tonight you know the truth. For most of human history, life was slower, closer, richer in presence. That knowledge is not gone. It is waiting, like the ember in the ash, to be fanned again. So as you close your eyes, let the ember glow inside you. Let it remind you that you are not a machine, not a cog in a clock, but a human, a creature of firelight, of story, of kin. The long shadow of civilization may stretch across the world, but you carry a light older than any shadow. And when you wake again, you will know the fire still speaks, the memory still burns, and you are part of a story that began long before the first city and will continue long after the last. Sleep now. The ember is safe.